Hey guys, here are your Linux, open source and privacy news for the first half of September 2020. This time we've got tons of new hardware supporting Linux, elementary OS on the Pinebook Pro and the revival of the Oxygen KDE theme. Let's take a look right after this. This video is sponsored by Linode. Founded in 2003, Linode is the largest independent cloud service provider built on open source. If it runs on Linux, it runs on Linode. Multiple distros are available, including Ubuntu, CentOS, Alpine, and of course Arch. The multiple server configurations make any app or service flexible and scalable to host a website, set up your own personal VPN, create a Nextcloud instance, host a game server, and more. Linode offers 24/7 support any day of the year, by phone or support ticket, regardless of your plan size. The simple pricing with monthly caps ensures that there is no hidden fees and a generous monthly transfer is built in, which means there is no large bill surprises like you get from AWS or Azure. Sign up today at linode.com/linuxexperiment to get your $100 in Linux server credits. The link is in the description. Okay, let's start with the Linux news. Elementary OS added experimental support for the Pinebook Pro. As the team points out, it's not officially supported in any capacity, and there are performance issues due to GTK 3 not supporting hardware acceleration. The problems seem to reside especially in the animations and the speed, and they had to crank up the CPU to make up for that, so battery life might be worse than what you're expecting. It's still an interesting experiment, and an elementary OS Pinebook Pro seems like a dream machine to me. Windows Subsystem for Linux version 2 integrated Windows tighter with Linux, letting you browse external disks using Linux file systems right from Windows. You could already browse Linux-compatible file systems that resided on the same disk as your Windows install, but now you can also access file systems located on other disks, which might be useful for people dual booting Windows and a Linux distro on separate disks. Nuno Pinheiro, one of the main artists that worked on the KDE 4 Oxygen theme and icons, is thinking about getting back into the fray and starting a new theme. He wants to create not only the icons, but also the plasma theme and the Qt theme, with a modern look and feel. There are some small mockups he started working on, and while this is going to be a long endeavor, I think Nuno can pull it off, especially if other people want to get involved. Since I absolutely love the Oxygen theme and think it's one of the best ever created for any desktop environment, I'm super excited to see what he comes up with. On to the open source news. Microsoft open sourced the kernel they used in their new Android phone, the Surface Duo. This should enable people to create custom ROMs or just mod their device. It's a good move to make sure that people can help improve how Android runs on the Surface Duo, especially since early reviews seem to point out some performance problems. A member of the KDE team showed what kind of data they can use out of the opt-in telemetry added to the Plasma desktop. In short, it seems that there is still people using 800 by 600 displays, although maybe they're just virtual machines, and ultra-wide displays are still super rare. A quarter of the total Plasma users use NVIDIA graphics with the proprietary drivers, and almost no one runs the latest LTS versions, which questions its utility. This should help the KDE team to focus on things that their users actually need instead of wasting their development efforts on stuff that no one will actually use. Let's move on to the applications. Blender had a big release with version 2.9. While I have not much knowledge in 3D modeling and texturing, there are some big improvements, like a new physics-based texture for simulating colors of the sky, a rewritten motion blur, a new filter to simulate how cloth flows physically, and some new deformation modes. The interface also has received a few tweaks and improvements. You can see all the changes in their release video, I left a link in the description below. Todoist now has a Linux version of their application. It's just an Electron app, so basically their website wrapped in a shell, but it still supports all Todoist features. It can also work offline, so it doesn't require you to stay connected to the internet to actually complete your tasks, which is nice. It's distributed as a snap though, which might annoy some people. I still prefer using Planner on Linux since it's a native app and can sync with Todoist. The interface just looks better to me and it integrates perfectly with elementary OS, so I'll pass on this one. Now let's talk about the hardware. Tuxedo announces yet again 2 new computers running Linux. Now these guys are prolific. The 15 and 17-inch laptops are still based on Clevo designs, but they offer a choice between Intel or AMD CPUs with NVIDIA dedicated graphics. They also sport 144Hz IPS displays, which should be good for gamers. The chassis is aluminum, and the battery life is stated for around 5 hours of video playback at mid-brightness, with 10 hours being achievable, although probably in a not very realistic configuration. These machines also offer a healthy selection of ports, like HDMI, mini DisplayPort, an SD card reader, and USB-A as well as USB-C. The first ThinkPad with Fedora pre-installed was made available by Lenovo. It's the X1 Carbon Gen 8 and it's only the first of the whole ThinkPad line. The next machines to be sold with Fedora 32 pre-installed will be the ThinkPad P1 Gen 2 and the ThinkPad P53, which Jason Evangelo has reviewed on his channel Linux for Everyone. Lenovo is also planning to certify all their workstation portfolio with Ubuntu, so these machines will probably be the top choice for people needing a work-grade laptop for running Linux. On an unrelated side note, manufacturers really need to work on their product naming scheme. Jesus. HP has announced that their new ZBooks will be certified to run Ubuntu. This means that these machines will be able to run the distro without any tweaks at all, so most other distros should run just as well on them. These laptops are designed for enterprise and use workstation graphics like the Nvidia Quattro RTX or the AMD Radeon Pro W5500M. With Lenovo, Dell and HP now having machines that can run Linux without any tweaking, I think we're approaching the point where people might start to notice our operating system. And now let's complete with the gaming news. The Open Source Summit 2020 will have a talk dedicated to Linux gaming. It will be given by Gabriel Krisman Bertazzi, who is a senior engineer at Collabora. He will talk about how Wine and Proton enable gaming on Linux as a strong contender to Windows, and what can be done to ensure that this translation layer can work even better thanks to some kernel changes. It's great to see gaming on Linux being mentioned at big events, and it cements the fact that gaming on our operating system of choice is now a reality, and that, while we still have some work to do to make sure we can properly play almost any game, we're reaching a tipping point. Itch.io now detects your Wine installation and lets you install Windows games if it exists. It doesn't allow users to specifically pick a Proton or Wine version, it just looks for the system-wide install and uses that, so it won't be as efficient or flexible as what Valve has done with Steam, but it's a great first step. Let's hope some other stores pick that up and implement a solution comparable to what Steam offers. I would be satisfied with a Linux client for the Epic Game Store, Origin or Uplay that integrates well with Proton and allows per-game tweaks. Some bad news as well for Linux gaming. Asper, the company responsible for porting Borderlands 2 on Linux, have announced that they wouldn't be bringing the latest Borderlands 2 DLC on our platform. This DLC bridges the gap between Borderlands 2 and 3, and the company didn't really exactly mention the reason, but one might think that working on a 12-year-old game might not exactly be profitable for them, and either the publisher or Asper themselves have decided that it wasn't worth the effort. It's still sad to see that other operating systems get more support and more developer time than Linux. Wine 5.17 has been released, with more DLLs converted to the PE executable format, the beginnings of a network driver, and 17 bug fixes, including for World of Tanks, Visual Studio 2019, Chrome and Chromium, or the Sims Complete Collection. As always, this new release will probably be the base for the next Proton version available through Steam. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. If you really did like the video, you can join my amazing Patreon supporters and YouTube members and enjoy a monthly Patreon cast, all articles on my website a day early, and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!